Good afternoon, Mr. Arindam Ray. Should we start our program?
Yeah.
So, remote.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Yes, we can start.
Okay, thank you very much. So, a very good afternoon to all the panelists and the participants. I am Anil Kathar, Junior Consultant, Center for Hill Area Development, GMR Division and NIDM. And on the behalf of National Institute of Disaster Management, Ministry of Home Affairs, and South Asian Institute for Advanced Research and Development, I welcome you all to the second day of 3-day capacity building program on landslide risk management and GIS technology. So today there will be 3 lectures in our technical session from eminent speakers, namely Dr. Sankaria, Faculty and Director, Center for Disaster Management and Planning, SAIARD, and Dr. Harjeet Kaur, Junior Consultant, NIDM, and last one, Dr. Kuntala Bhushan, Scientist, Northeastern Space Application Center. They will be discussing different spectrum of landslide research and landslide risk management. But before initiating our today's technical session, I pass on this floor to Mr. Arindam Ray, Director Academic Affairs, SAIARD, for a summary of first day of the training program. So with these words, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anil sir. Yesterday's session was really very outstanding session where the Professor Surya Prakash sir focused over the post-monsoon period and relations of landslide with it. He expressed the how landslide affects our livelihood, livestock, and he wanted to say that for controlling the effects of landslide, we need to take action from grassroots level. Professor Surya Prakash also explained about the several landslide case study in whole India. He also told about the national landslide susceptibility mapping and how it's relevant in modern days. After that, our next speaker was Dr. Vinod Kumar Sharma sir, and he illustrated his views over the landslide in Sikkim. He told that the how landscape is changed due to the landslide. He expressed his concern the most districts of the northeast India and which are very much vulnerable in landslide. And according to him, the geospatial technology is very important in this case. He expressed the 3 approaches where he want to locate the hotspot of landslide area. By taking help from the national disaster plan, we should adopt the scientific technology. In his third approach, he also said to match the district disasters plan with the state disaster plan and central disaster plan and create multi-hazard disaster map. Next speaker was Dr. Sunil Kumar De, and he expressed his view over the landslide risk zonation and management plan with special emphasis to Tripura. According to him, we should prepare the landslide susceptibility zonation map, resource potential map, etc. He also explained the landslide potential resource and damage potential were combined in order to get the landslide risk. In preventive measures section, he expressed over the retention wall, subsurface drain, and horizontal drill drains and vegetal treatment of damaged slope, etc. Yesterday, our last speaker was Dr. Bishwajit Bera, and he delivered lecture on the earthquake-induced landslide in Sikkim and Western Bhutan Himalaya. He actually wanted to say that landslide is nothing but a geohazard. His main focus theme was that geohazard. We can say landslide as a geohazard. And he showed that the lithological structure of Bhutan, Himalaya, and the nature of landslides over there. But without wasting much time, we are all expecting for today's wonderful lectures, and even today we have the eminent speakers who will focus on this topic. So over to you, Anil sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ray, for providing succinct of on day 1. So moving to our technical session, I request participants for their active participation in the technical session. So please do raise your relevant queries or any doubts to our speakers. So the first speaker of today's technical session is Dr. Sankaria, a faculty and director, Center for Disaster and Planning, SAIARD. He is prudent and disciplined leader with more than 18 years of experience in remote sensing and GIS functions related to natural disasters. Dr. Dayal had been associated with Bihar State Disaster Management Authority, Patna, as senior advisor, natural disaster. And prior to that, he had been a project fellow in Ministry of Environment and Forest, Government of India. And he had also been senior research fellow at Morphotectonic Evaluation, ISRO, India. He's a keen planner, strategist, and implementer with expertise in planning and execution of geological, remote sensing, and GIS projects. And today, sir will be providing insights on landslide hazard evaluation, a review of current techniques and their application in a multi-scale study. So with these words, I pass on the stage to you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Anilji, there is just a correction from my side that title has been changed. The new title is Remote Sensing and GIS Application in Landslide Risk Assessment and Management.
Okay, sir.
So I'm taking this presentation to all of you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, no issue. Thank you. Shall I start?
Sure, sir, you can start.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Today I'm share the slide. Is it visible? Hello.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
My slides are visible.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The title is Remote Sensing and GIS Application in Landslide Risk Management, Assessment and Management. Basically, this remote sensing is a very important tool when we talk about any natural disaster. When I say any natural disaster, we talk about, I'm talking about earthquake, floods, geology, landslide, and debris flow. Basically, mountainous region belongs to active complex geological setup represented by many geological structures, rocks, steep hill slopes, diverse climate, and intense precipitation. Population growth and expansion of settlement in life over hazardous area are increasing the impact of natural disaster both in developed and developing world. In many countries, the economic losses and casualties due to landslide are greater than commonly recognized, and generally a yearly loss of property less than that from any natural disaster, including earthquake, and floods, and windstorm. Casualties due to hills slope failure are larger in developing countries, where economic losses are more severe in industrialized world. Both may be increasing because of higher values of endangered structures and greater number of people potentially involved. Within this framework, the earth science and geomorphology in particular may play a relevant role in assessing areas at high land hazard and in helping mitigate the associated risk, providing a valuable aid to sustainable process. The tools for
Excuse me,
handling,
sir.
yes,
Sorry to interrupt. There is black screen. There is
Okay.
no PowerPoint visible.
Just a minute. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir, it's visible, but the slide, it is not readable.
Slides are not readable. You mean the font size is very small?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just a minute.
It will be good if you can use your laptop or desktop for that.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Just a minute. Let me connect with my Sharing, where is the share? Screen share? Anilji? Anilji,
Yes,
hello.
sir. Yes, sir.
Have you given me the permission to share my screen?
I think in this meet there is it is not needed to provide any. I'm not the host to provide this.
The entire screen. Just give it to me. Share. Is it okay now? Hello?
Sir, your screen is showing you are sharing your screen with everyone. Nothing else. Dr. Shankar, are you there? I think there is some technical issue on the part of Dr. Shankar. We will do one thing. We will move to the next lecture. So for the next lecture, Dr. Harjeet Kaur has joined us, and Dr. Kaur is associated as junior consultant with Center of Coastal Disaster Risk Reduction and Resilience in GMR division of NIDM. And prior to NIDM, she was working in landslide risk management in Gangtok, Sikkim. Dr. Kaur has published more than 16 research publications in reputed international journals, and she is a recipient of number of awards, fellowships, and professional recognitions. And today, Dr. Kaur will be providing insight on landslide risk assessment, a case study. With these words, over to you, Dr. Kaur.
Good afternoon, Anil sir. I hope my voice is audible to you. Okay, sir. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to present my research work in this platform. So as you can see that my presentation topic is on landslide risk assessment for Himalayan region. So basically here I'm focused for the Sikkim Himalaya. So before going to a technical session, I would like to share the COVID appropriate behavior. So please wear mask properly, wash your hands with soap and water. If water is not available, please use alcohol based sanitizer and avoid touching of sensitive organ like eyes, nose and mouth, and keep the physical distancing and clean surface regularly. So please do it all to fight against COVID-19. So as you can see from this map that I'm showing a landslide vulnerability map of India that was published by the Geological Survey of India. From this map, you can see basically the Himalayan region. From this side, the Kashmir and the Uttarakhand region, Himachal Pradesh, and here the northeastern region and our western Ghats, these are vulnerable due to landslide hazard. So they have classified the landslide vulnerability into 5 categories, very high to very low hazard. So I'm not going to detailed presentation because I hope that yesterday our speakers were discussed about the landslide definitions and basic terminology related to the landslide assessment. Full screen hai na? Anil sir, my PPT is visible to you because from my end it's full screen showing.
Actually, it's not in power show mode.
Actually, I'm not. If somebody is from SAIARD who will help me how to make my to show my PPT full screen, because from my end I'm not able to do it, sir. Or should I carry on like this way?
Dr. Kaur, you can carry on.
Sometimes, I mean, you will see the full screen, but the PPT will come like this. It happens sometimes. So I think you can carry on.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you very much. So as I'm discussing about the general landslide vulnerability of our country. So this is the data that I have downloaded from the EMTAT. So I would request our participants or the research scholars who are interested to get the vulnerability or death related data to any natural hazard. So you can easily download this data from their website. So particularly from 1986 to 2008, I have collected these data, and from these graph you can see that the landslide occurrences is less, but the death is high. So this is the basic number of landslide occurrences and total death due to landslide hazard in our country. So here the study is focused for the Sikkim Himalaya, and I have focused for the Gangtok and the Sikkim region, because I think most of you know that the Gangtok is the capital of Sikkim state, and the Sikkim is the most important district because it's connect the Sikkim area from West Bengal. So from that point of view, it's a very much important, and small scale industries, pharmaceutical industries are in the Sikkim region. So basically here we have focused for this Ranikola river basin. From this map, this the outline boundary showing the study area for the Sikkim Himalaya. So this is the Gangtok city, or you can see the GMC ward-wise map, and this is the ward-wise map of the Sikkim city. Basically, as you know that for if you want to do a risk assessment, so you need a building footprint map, and where if you know that if we are focusing for a disaster, so we focusing for the population, for the and the infrastructure. So that's why we have focused for the highly populated area of this region. This is some glimpse from my study area, and from these images, the main basic purpose to show these images that you can see how the landslide disrupt the daily activity. And this image that landslide block all the taxi stand in
Excuse me,
Chandna.
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry for interrupting you, but the slides are not moving. Can you just reshare it once again?
Yes.
Because it's just showing the same slide.
Okay, just give me a minute. Now, how can I know? I think it's showing my study area map.
Dr. Kar, your slides are not visible.
It's not visible. Sir, now
Now
my,
it's visible.
yeah, I have to make it full screen, I think so.
Sure.
Yeah. So I have shown you some landslide images from Gangtok areas and the Sikkim area. So the main purpose of showing these images that you can see from these images how this landslide will disrupt the daily activity of that area. It's blocked the road, it blocks the tunnel, and even it disrupt the transportation line. So that's why we need to analyze the landslide risk assessment for the Gangtok city. And this image, from this image, you can, the D, number D, here the main thing is it's showing the sinking of the road. And it is a very famous area of Sikkim, Chanmari area, where the recurrence of landslide occurred. So we need to focus for early warning system for this particular area. And now, basically, the landslide studies, if we are going for the risk assessment, we need to prepare the inventory map first, then hazard, vulnerability, and lastly, the risk. And then after the outcome, we can predict some mitigation strategies for or management for the landslide. So for landslide inventory, these are some basic methodology. You need to collect the data from ground base and from satellite imagery. So from satellite imagery, as you have to purchase the high resolution data from where you can easily detect the landslide, or you can demarcate the landslide zone. So even from the Google Earth also you can detect the landslide occurrence. Then after the collection of landslide imagery, you can also get these even locations from the old reports. Even you can go for DST archives from GSI. You can ma'am, my slide is moving or not? Can anyone confirm from their side?
No, it is not moving.
Still, it's not moving.
Yeah.
Even I don't know what is the problem here, because I'm just.
Ma'am, actually, slides will not move if full screen mode is on.
Oh, now it's okay from for the visible portion.
Dr.
Should
Kar,
I
please re-share your screen.
again? अब दिख रहा है? So
Now
now,
it's visible.
okay, sir. So I think I can skip the full screen mode. So I'm talking about how we can prepare the landslide inventory. So first we need to collect the data from the field study and from the satellite imagery, or even we can go for the reports from the GSI, DST. Reports from GSI, from local newspaper also you can get the landslide occurrence date, and even from the someone PhD thesis you can get the data. Then after all the collection of the data, you need to validate the inventory data, and through analysis you have to prepare the map. Then there is a methodology. You can go for a event based landslide inventory, like here I have used the temporal probability estimation and accidents probability, and then after I have used the special probability estimations, and after from these outcome I have prepared the landslide density map and the frequency analysis. So here I'm talking about the landslide inventory preparations. As from this is a very good example from how you can prepare the landslide demarcation map from the satellite imagery and the Google Earth. So after the collection of all the landslide inventory data, we have come up with the location point for all the landslide occurrences throughout the Ranikola River Basin. So these are some analysis. The distribution of analysis for the period from 57 to 2017. If means if you are going to calculate the temporal and the spatial probability for the hazard assessment, then you need to calculate all the distribution or spatial and spatial probability map for the hazard. Now, the most important thing for the inventory, the research gap, is that the role of spatial predictors and their inter-predictor weights are relevant in mapping of susceptibility in the Himalayan environment. And basically we use the medium scale landslide inventories and which is we convert into a useful landslide hazard map. And there is no standard method for the landslide susceptibility mapping. So this is basically a research, or you can say the limitation for our country. Then after the preparation of the inventory, we need to prepare the landslide susceptibility map. So as I have told that for the susceptibility, there is a no standard methodology. Different scientists used different techniques to calculate the susceptibility, landslide susceptibility for their study area. So even from their analytical AHP process, they can go for the multi-hierarchy, even they are going for the artificial neural network method. And basically here what they are doing, they just after getting the susceptibility map, they validate their data through somebody is using success and prediction rate curve map, or they can use the Wilcoxon sign rank test. So it's depend on you what methodology you are using for the validation and for the mapping, landslide susceptibility mapping. For susceptibility, as I hope you have a clear idea about that landslide is triggered by means landslide occurs by the triggering factors. Some are triggering factors and the preparatory factors. So we need to find out the landslide occurrence for triggering factors, and for the preparatory factors, those are responsible for the landslide occurrence. So I have through GSI reports, DST reports, I have found that these 16 factors is responsible for the landslide occurrence in my study area. So these are geology, lithology, drainage density, uh, PWI, and different methods, or even lineament, thrust, land use, land cover, NDVI. All we have prepared the map for the susceptibility, and basically the triggering factor is the rainfall for my study area. So we have prepared a rainfall map for the study area also. So this is the outcome. I have used a different method for the susceptibility mapping, and it shows different methodology shows different outcome. But the main focus you have seen that these portion, the low and high vulnerable zone are maximum similar areas. So this is the map, how much percentage is covering in high hazard zone, in medium, and low and very high hazard zone areas. So this is basically a scientific thing. So I'm just skipping these model evaluation methods. If somebody is interested, so they can mail me, so I can help you for a research work. Then after creating preparation of the inventory and the susceptibility map for landslide hazard, we need to prepare the element at risk if you are focusing for the vulnerability. So as I have told that I'm basically for the vulnerability assessment, I have focused for the Gangtok and the Sikkim region. So I have prepared the building footprint map of my study area. For the physical, I have classified the vulnerability for the physical, social, economic vulnerability. So here I have taken the transportation network, all the transportation network like road, because in mostly in my study area in Gangtok, Sikkim region, there is no rail network. So I have focused for the road network, and here I have classified the road network as a kacha, and means like a concave road and unpaved road. Then I have also prepared the map for the lifeline, like water supply lines, gas pipeline, communication line, electricity's pole, and population data also I have prepared. So these are the element at risk for my study area. So this is all the statistical data for the Sikkim and the Gangtok city. So basically, I have shown one example from my ward area. This is from Burtuk. This is Ward 1 in Gangtok area, where you can see that I have designate the places under the legend. I have show the building footprint map, and even you know that this area is a highly restricted area. Armies are there, so I have categorized these data because they have refused the survey. So I have just classified these restricted area under the refuse survey. So this is basically how I have classified the study area for my element at risk map. Then these are some vulnerable building, or you can assess the typology of a building. Though these are vulnerable from a viewpoint, you can easily see these buildings are vulnerable, and these are some in their language in Sikkim. They these hut shape buildings are known as ikra houses. So you can see these houses are under the vulnerable slopes, and this is under the Chandmari area. So this is very high vulnerable zone for the landslide. So this is the social element where I have considered the male, female, institutional, and the information is not available. So I have classified my data according to the availability. So for the vulnerability, we know that for vulnerability, we are focused for the exposure and resistance and resilience. So these methodology I have used to classify overall vulnerability for my study. So I have generate a physical vulnerability map, population vulnerability, and generate social vulnerability. So I have just shown this table for how you can classify your physical vulnerability. so here I have taken like for a building material, building ownership wise, and again I have chosen these factor, and I have sub classify these data like a building material. I have classified this building material as paved, semi permanent, and unpaved buildings as per BMPTC. So then again, the building ownership, I have classified this building ownership data as a private and government buildings. Then building floor, like for landslide, we have basically we have considered more than one floor is vulnerable for landslide hazard. So like this way I have classified my physical data. Then building use, like the building is used for the religious purpose, or it is used for the hotel, shop, educational institute, for the commercial purpose. So I have these data. So according to the availability of data, I have classified building according to availability. Then lifeline structure I have and even I have considered the vacant land plot for my studies. Then for the social vulnerability, here I have considered social vulnerability formula is to calculate the social vulnerability. I have considered for the sensitivity and lack of resilience. So in the again I have prepared two map. For one is for sensitivity, and then for the lack of resilience. So sensitivity I have considered because I have a data population data age wise. So I have classified these data like a younger population, those are younger population. Then I have considered the vulnerable population like a female population, illiterate person, and I have also considered the population density map, and it's always average of these factor, and I have get the sensitivity map of for my particular areas. Then similarly for lack of resilience, like a tenant population, those are living slum population, I have considered for my study areas. And the drainage problem also I have considered the buildings or the houses, those have a drainage issues. Then water connection problem, so these I have considered for the lack of resilience for my studies area. Then after compilation of all the physical vulnerability and social vulnerability, so this map is building vulnerability, or you can say the physical vulnerability for my Sikkim region, for particular landslide hazard. Then this is the social vulnerability map of the Sikkim areas, and this is after combining all the vulnerability, physical and social. I will get the map of overall vulnerability for my Sikkim areas, and this is for similarly for the Gangtok region, and this is the vulnerability map of Gangtok area. So now after completion of a vulnerability, we move towards a risk analysis. So we know that the risk is the product of hazard, vulnerability. uh, so from all from these images you can easily find out ki, for the hazard landslide hazard map, I have prepared the conditioning. We need to prepare the conditioning factors map. Then with their landslide inventory map, we are able to find out the landslide hazard map of for my particular study area. Then we have prepared the landslide vulnerability map, and after combining all these map, we get the risk map for my studies area. So this is all about the risk map for landslide for Gangtok and Sikkim areas. So these red patches show the high risk zone. These buildings are under the high risk. Now, conclusion from my presentation is that basically from my research, what I have found that the area like Burtuk or the Chanmari area and or the Darangao, Chisopani areas, these are under a more prone to landslide hazard, and the population of Chisopani area, the Lal Bazar of Sikkim areas are under the Gangtok city are more vulnerable to landslide hazard. And basically the Sikkim cities is significantly exposed to low risk under the landslide risk approach as compared to Gangtok cities. And what I have found that some school, colleges and hospital offices, hotels are under the high risk zone. So we need to focus for these areas. These are some publications from my study, and the way forward from my presentation is that we need to develop some techniques and management for landslide strategies. Even the already NDMA published a guidelines on landslide management. They have published mitigation strategies, and for my study area, basically, I would recommend construction of a retaining wall at vulnerable slopes, and we need proper pre-incident training and mock drills for the people those are living at vulnerable areas according to the studies area, and we need to identify the input factors for the vulnerability, because this is the major research gap in this study, because the data availability is very less, and how you can quantify your data, because it's very expensive if you are going to door to door survey. So we need a accurate vulnerability analysis. Then we need to build up risk analysis by developing some techniques, standard techniques for hazard and vulnerability assessment. So thank you very much. If there is any question, so you can ask me. Anil sir, back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaur, for sharing your field experience and enriching the knowledge of our participant on landslide risk assessment from the state of Sikkim, and touching various phases of landslide mapping. So the floor is open for Q&A session. If there is any query, participant can raise. Dr. Kaur, as of now, there are no queries, but if there will be any, we will be sharing with you. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
So now I pass on the stage to Dr. Sankaria for his talk on remote sensing and GIS application in landslide risk assessment and management. Over to you, sir. Dr. Dayal, are you there? Can anyone from SAIARD side confirm the presence of Dr. Dayal?
Excuse me, sir. Actually, I'm trying to connect him. I think he'll be like, I'm trying to connect Shankar Dayal, sir. It might take some minutes, sir.
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
Antara, any problem?
So
Hello.
actually, Shankar sir has left the meeting, so I'm trying to connect him.
Maybe due to some technical issues we faced, so we can continue with the next speaker. After that, he can start. Anilji, what do you suggest?
Sir, actually, I was looking to Dr. Kuntala in the participant list, but she has not joined yet.
Sir,
Kuntala,
Shankar sir is saying that he is in the meeting, but we can't hear him.
I think he is in attendees.
what happened? Sorry, Antara.
So actually, Shankar sir is saying to me that he is in the meeting, but we can't hear him. But there's nobody in the waiting room. There's no one in the waiting room.
Okay, okay. Let me talk to him once again. Just hold.
Yes, sir. Kindly.
Who shared the screen? Okay, SAIARD.
Due to some technical issue, Dr. Sankar Dayal is having difficulty to join us. So we will move to our next speaker. For next presentation, I pass on the stage to Mr. Raju Thapa. He's junior consultant in National Institute of Disaster Management, and Dr. Thapa will be providing insight on enhancing resilience through landslide early warning system and approach to disaster risk reduction. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Let me share once again. So, good afternoon, all the participants. I will be talking about the basics of early warning and communication and why we need to focus on particularly on early warning and communication. So, sorry for the technical glitches that we had today. But so I think this is a part of our now online system, so we have to learn to cope with that, right? So first of all, needless to say, we are still facing this COVID-19, and we as a country as a whole, everybody has a role to play. That we must not forget that we are still facing, and there are in some countries there are still cases coming up where there is an increase in COVID cases. So we must be very careful in all our activities. So whatever you do, whether it is the physical distancing or using of face mask, or regularly washing your hand and covering one's mouth, and regularly self-monitoring ourselves and getting vaccinated, everything we have to do, whatever is available. And before moving to the main topic of the early warning and communications in disaster, the one thing that I would like to highlight is that if you just compare, if you just see the data in this figure, it's very interesting. Why I'm showing this figure is that you will see that everybody will agree with me that the number of disasters has increased tremendously. If you consider the last 20 years data, that means if you compare it from 2000 to 2019 and 1980 to 1999, you will find that the number of disaster has increased tremendously. And just one second. One second. Sorry. I think my presentation is not that much visible. Just let me check once again. So, like I was saying, that in recent times we have seen that there is an increase in number of disasters, and but the important thing is that you will understand that even though there is an increase in number of disaster, you will see that the total number of deaths that are almost still equivalent to earlier 20 years. Earlier 20 years from 1980 to 99. And one of the key factors that contribute to it is that advancement of science and technology, advancement of early warning system that are in place. Because of that, now people are getting information prior to an incoming disaster. Suppose particularly you will agree with me in case of a cyclone, particularly if you will see now people are having, and way before the warning that are issued by IMD, that are generated by IMD, issued by various agencies. And now because of that, now people before the cyclone hit the coast, before the landfills, people are moved to the cyclone shelters and other places for the safety. Because of that, people now, the number of disasters has decreased. So, and we will discuss this in my later slide also. And one more thing that we need to understand is the whenever we talk about the total number of people affected by disaster type, flood is the one that contributes most, around 41%. There is a difference that we have to understand, because between the total number of people affected and the total number of death. People affected means those people who are influenced by that disaster, whether in any ways, whether they are impacted in their property or anything. But number of death, when you will see number of death, you will see that earthquake is the main disaster which caused large number of deaths. And in addition to that, you consider any disasters, whether it is drought or earthquake, extreme temperature, flood, landslides, anyone. So you will see that nowadays there is a trend that all disasters are increasing, and we have to be very careful about that. And even COP26 recently, I think you have heard, where even our Prime Minister Narendra Modi has laid down 5-point mantras, Panchamrit. So that, and highlighting what India will do towards that. So now this is a reality we have to face, and we have to understand that the intensity and the number and the ferocity of disasters are also increasing. Just consider this year only, we had 3 cyclones, major cyclones. So you can understand how there is a change or a shifting pattern of disasters when we are talking about. Apart from that, India, when we are talking as a country, we know India is because of its a very unique geoclimatic, geophysical appearance, locations. You will see that India is prone to a large number of disasters, and when we are comparing it with other countries, we fall just on the third, just after China and US. So which gives us an idea that how disaster prone is our country. So we need to look upon that also. and the number of disasters reported per country, if you'll see that Asia suffers one of the most highly number of disaster event. There are several factors to that contributes, whether it is the high risk of natural hazards because of the river plain, that basins that we have in Asia, or the flood plains, or the seismic fault lines. Everything contribute to that. Additionally, one more thing that is very important is that the high population density, in particularly in Asia. Whenever we talk about the high and largest number of population, China and India, typically they dominate the list of countries. So and you will understand the extent to which this China and India, they contribute to, when we are talking about the people impacted by disaster, that 70% of the global total people affected by disaster, China and India, they contribute to that. So you can understand because of the large size of our continent, also because of the location of our continent, and because of the large population, everything contribute and makes our country and also our Asia Pacific region very disaster prone. And in any disaster, you will see that disaster is not that affects everybody equally. Disaster disproportionately affect those with the lowest socioeconomic status, including those suffering from poverty, as well as minorities and discriminated group. As you can see from our earlier slide, Dr. Hajikor, she showed some slides, landslides of the field picture, where people were residing in steep slope. Sometimes because of the financial limitations, they are forced to stay in those areas. And whenever there is a landslide, those are the most people who get affected first. So that's why the low income is one of the main factors, where people are, because of their income status, they are forced to stay in high risk areas. And as we go up the socio-economic status, the number of deaths per income group also decreases. And in addition to that, morbidity to natural disaster, also you will see that women and children, they are much more vulnerable to disaster as compared to men. And according to UNDP report, it was found that women and children, they are around 14 times more likely to die due to a natural disaster. And this is not a random data. Okay, during the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, 70% of the victims were women. And similarly, in 2008 cyclone Nargis in Myanmar, it killed twice as many women aged 18 to 60 as men. In 2005 Hurricane Katrina affected predominantly African American women, illustrating the fact that poor minorities are more exposed to natural disaster. So a million of people around the Asia Pacific region, they remained exposed to a higher frequency and intensity of natural hazards, from locust, locust last year we have, to earthquake, to cyclone and other exceptional events. And the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated how, in an increasing globalized world, hazards can be threatened as a systematic global collapse, creating risk that often interacted with one triggering another in a cascading of devastating events. Sorry, the animations are not working because of some reason, so I will just continue with the slides. Actually, there were animations, so it's not working. So this COVID-19 also has taught us that this new disaster health climate nexus, it must be addressed in order to achieve the sustainable development goals, what we have set up. And over the past 2 decades, it has been observed that the countries in particularly Asia and the Pacific has made the significant progress and in achieving various goals, but still there are lots to be done, and the simultaneous impacts of various hazards present a riskscape that is expanding. Okay, and in particular when biological risks are combined with those from our natural hazards, as we have seen in recent COVID-19. We had both COVID and cyclones. We had COVID along with flood. I will give you some examples also in my later slide. So this will harshly demonstrate by the global spread of COVID, and like I was saying, and the pandemic combined with the reality of climate change is is I think reshaping and expanding the disaster risk scape, and we have to find a way, and we have to think about emerging disaster climate health nexus, and which demand a much more systematic and approach to disaster risk reduction. So while the COVID-19 pandemic raised on, the region continued to experience other natural hazards, like I was saying. So as you can see here, just during this COVID-19, not only India, just see in Afghanistan, in Australia, in Bangladesh, everywhere, China, there were a number of disasters where the COVID-19, it compounded the disaster. So what does that mean is that because of one disaster, the other was getting more, we had a domino effect. And just take few examples. The cyclone Amphan, it struck India, in 2020. So it was one of the strongest recorded cyclone that hit densely populated coastal areas. And in West Bengal itself, it damaged more than 560 primary health centers. So, in particularly during COVID-19, you can understand the importance of those health centers. Not only that, take the example of Assam, where which is a prime example, I think, of the convergence of disaster. What I mean to say is that during that time, Assam, they have recorded the highest peak of COVID cases in one day, that is 1200, around 1200 COVID cases, because the people were moved to relief camp, and they were asked to stay there, and because of the heavy flood that was there. And just imagine, that is just one aspect of the disaster. The other aspect is that farmer, because of the COVID-19 rules and regulations, the transportation was not allowed. It was banned. There was complete lockdown. The farmer whose crops were damaged, they were unable to harvest the remaining crops also because of the pandemic lockdown. So you can imagine the other impact on them also. And the convergence of, like I said, biological and natural hazard has added to the stress of poverty and inequality, further damaging the life prospects of millions of people. So why I have discussed this is that so that I can give you an idea that now the time has come, I think, and it has been highlighted everywhere, that we need to have a multi-hazard approach, so that multi-hazard early warning system come into play, so that we don't plan for only one disaster, because if there is an occurrence of any disasters, if you have a multi-hazard approach, it will be more reliable and it will be more dependent. So whenever I'm talking about early warning system, you might ask, why do we need early warning system? So basically, early warning system is needed for two basic reasons. The first is, no doubt, is the safety of the human life, because that is most important, to safeguard the life of the people. But with the advancement also, we also have to think the safeguard the life, not only life, the property of the people, because infrastructure is also, safeguarding the infrastructure is also very, very important. And if we safeguard the infrastructure, if we safeguard the property, then we safeguard the resource of the nations. And if once we safeguard the resource of the nations, even after disaster, if we don't have those early warning system in place, then we have then the government is liable to a lots of investment in recovery phase, relief phase, and reconstruction phase. If you have a proper early warning system in place, and if we can safeguard our infrastructure and investments, then I think we can save a lot of money from there. So both the life and the property safeguarding, that is the main basic two important points that why we need early warning system. And talking about that, all this concept of early warning system, that was not that much limelight from before the implementation of Disaster Management Act 2005. Earlier, before that, we had an approach, but that was rather more reactive approach. now we have a multidimensional proactive holistic approach that is implemented, where a large number of agencies are interrelated. So in the standard approach, earlier approach, that was rather more reactive. So basically what used to happen earlier, there will be disasters like landslides, whether it is cyclone, flood, and after a disaster there will be response of the people, and most of the time it will lead to some chaos, some panic, or crowding, moving to one direction with no directions, right, with no idea where they are going. So all that thing happened. But now with the advancement of science and technology, and we are approaching to a rather more enhanced approach, at least I will say in relation to the weather related hazards. We often have some information ahead of the upcoming disaster event, and that information can be interrupted and used to prepare the emergency operation better. So in this all concept of this early warning, early action approach, we make full use of climate information, and we act in a way that prepare us better as a whole, but also with more strategic approach to disaster response. This early warning concept is not that it is talked about only in India, but it is something that is recognized globally. When we talk about early warning system, we have to understand that it has few components, and without understanding those components, it is difficult to proceed ahead. So whenever we talk about early warning system, we have to understand that the four components that we have to consider is the risk knowledge, the monitoring and warning services, the dissemination and communication, and the response capacity. So all this, when they are combined together, then we have an effective early warning system. So talking about risk knowledge, even Dr. Harjit also highlighted that it's a combination of hazards and vulnerability at a particular location. So for that, whichever area you are talking about, where for that to carry out a risk assessment, we have to understand what are the hazards that are that are there, what are the vulnerabilities, what is the exposure of your area of interest. Then based on that, you will understand what is the level of exposures, what is the pathway of exposures, sensitivity to the hazards. Considering all that features, then you will have a complete risk information about a particular area, which will be followed by the second part, that is monitoring and warning services. So monitoring and warning is nothing, it is an process where we collect information about a particular interest, area of interest. Suppose you want to understand the earthquake, you want to monitor earthquake, then what you will measure? You will measure the seismic waves. Or you want to understand the flood or drought of a particular area. If you are monitoring that, you will be measuring the, suppose, rainfall using rain gauge or the automatic weather stations. So that is what is we call monitoring, and it is one of the most important part of early warning and communication. And not only our the physical, the on point method, with the more advancement, with the advancement in the satellite communications, satellite imagery, they can add in estimating the various important features, whether it is the temperature, wind speed, precipitation, and several others. So that contribute, and that also makes a job much more faster and easier to complete. And apart from that, the land-based radars for estimating downpours, that is also very important. And all these data are not enough. These data, they need to be all collected, and those data needs to be interpreted using some trend analysis that can be done. And for that, and skills is needed, and if you have the proper skills, and based on this trend analysis, all those data that has been collected, that can be integrated in some meaningful information. once we have the early warning for any particular disaster, that warning needs to be disseminated to the people. And while disseminating, there are various means through which that can be disseminated, whether it is radio, television, social media, print media, all different means. Now with the advancement, we have mobile application that is coming up as a very important tool. We have websites, email IDs, every different medias can be used for that. And the last component is the response capacity. In any disaster, we cannot exclude response capacity because no matter how much we have advanced so far, but still we are not in a stage that we can stop natural disaster from happening. So there will be always situations where response will be needed, particularly in case of earthquake. Response is needed sometimes very urgently. So for that, we need to work on our response, and we need to enhance our response by adopting some preparedness and prompt response by through mock drills, you can say, through providing trainings to the people, or by providing checklist of actions to undertake in certain situation. All this needs to be undertaken. And between these four components that I have just talked about, we need to have a consistency and collaborations. Until unless we have a collaboration between all these, it is very hard to come up with a desirable outcome. So we need to have coordination, collaboration amongst all the four stages. And in during communication, it is also seen that most of the time the communication network get damaged. So we need to have an beforehand some backup plans for communications, whether that is nowadays ham radio, or that which does not require the main communications, and which does not consume that much power, because sometimes power is also disrupted. So ham radio or other or amateur radio, we say, such type of backup communications can be very helpful, so that that can be used for the benefit of the people, for the benefit of the community when in times of need. So just for information, suppose for flood related, CGWB gives the is the nodal agency giving early warning for that. So they give 5-day advisory, also warning advisory. And just for your information, in 2008, CWC, they signed up an agreement with Google, where they work in collaboration, and the Google with the help of their satellite imagery and DAM data, and our government, they assist them with on ground points such as a gauge measurement that we have in place. They measure the water level, and that information they incorporate that using some hydraulic model, and based on that inundation map is generated. So the animation is not working. So based on that map, the area, it will they will inform you which area will be inundated, how much. So all that information are just at your fingertip. Just by googling, you will get all the information, and this information is also transferred to the NGOs, so that they can distribute it to the community at a very faster pace. So similarly for cyclone, also INQUIS, the Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services, they are the nodal agencies. And for tsunami, if you want to know more, we have conducted several webinars. You can go and just check this out in our NIDM YouTube channel. So you will get all the information out here. And so for an effective early warning system, we need to have an, it's a collaboration of our risk knowledge, is a collaboration of our monitoring services, dissemination services, and response capacity whenever it's needed. There are several cross-cutting issues. Like we need to have an effective governance and institutional arrangement. Like I said earlier, we need to have an multi-hazard approach. Involvement of the community is must, because community, they know much more what are the problems that are there, and considering of gender perspective and cultural diversity. Like I said earlier, sometimes women and children, they are the one who are much more affected. And key actors, everybody has a role to play, whether it's the community, the local government, central government, our regional institutions. Regional institutions, by suppose they can share documents or case studies that are so that we can learn from other countries also. Institutional bodies also, NGOs, private sector, science and academic community, they also have a role to play and contribute. So talking about a way forward, we need there is a requirement to strengthen disaster risk. We have to think and encourage the public and private investment in disaster risk reduction and management. And there's also needed that we need to strengthen disaster risk governance also. And even we have to work on technological innovations, broadcasting techniques, and no need to say that we have to work together for better data collection also, because once we have good data, then only we can have a good outcome and good prediction. So thank you very much. Back to you, Anil sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thapa, for your insightful deliberation on early warning and communication. A timely warning of any impending disaster event can definitely save many precious lives. So we need to strengthen and develop a robust early warning system for every disasters, so that we can save a loss of life, we can save loss of our infrastructure and structures, as well as our natural environment. So thank you very much. So time for Q&A session. If anyone has any query, they can raise their hand, or they can also post in the chat box. I think there is no query raised by our participants. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Thapa, for being with us and enlightening our participant. So moving to the next and last presentation of today's technical session. For last presentation, we are joined by Dr. Kuntala Bhushan. Dr. Kuntala Bhushan has done both her graduation and master in geology and PhD in landslide science. And from 2003, she is working in Northeastern Space Application Center as a scientist, and she is involved in various national user-funded and R&D projects, as well as contributing in the disaster management program of NESSC and NIDM, especially for landslide, both pre and post hazard and disaster phase. And today's ma'am will be providing insight on landslide hazard donation using remote sensing and GIS technique. So with this first, I pass on the stage to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for nice introduction. Myself, Kuntala Bhushan. So, shall I start sharing my slide?
Sure, ma'am.
Just a minute, I'm sharing my slide. My screen is visible?
Not yet, ma'am.
Okay, I have given the share command. Maybe it will take a few minutes. Is it visible now?
No, ma'am. Now your screen is visible, ma'am.
Okay. Fine.
Fine, ma'am.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, but your voice is little bit low.
Okay. Now is it okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let me increase the volume also. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. The topic given to me is landslide hazard zonation using remote sensing and GIS technique. So basically, for my introduction, I'm working in Northeastern Space Application Center, located in Umiam, Meghalaya, near Shillong. So my office works in 5 verticals: Earth observation applications, space science and atmospheric science, satellite communication area, Northeastern Regional Node for disaster risk reduction. So whatever disaster related activities we carry out under this node, and we also work under for capacity and outreach. Okay, mostly we execute all our works in project mode, either in national, user funded or R&D projects. Is it okay? I'm still audible proper clearly?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay. So for carrying out landslide susceptibility or landslide hazard zonation, I think you have all that aware of what is landslide, but still I thought of uh, giving that right from the scratch. So basically, the term landslide, it describes a wide variety of processes that results in the downward and outward movement of slope-forming materials. Okay, and depending upon the type of movement and the materials that are involved, these different categories of landslide are defined by the experts. Okay, so right from if it is a slow movement, then it is called creep, and if it is a very fast movement, then flow, like that. Okay, and if we consider the global scenario, um, mostly all the plate boundaries are dotted with number of landslide, and this Indian scenario also, if we consider in this one, so mostly the Himalayan collision zone and Indo-Burman subduction zone in the eastern and northern Himalayas, all these are reported with various magnitude and landslide of various frequencies. Okay, so this is a view of global susceptibility map, and this is the and then this is the generalized map produced by Geological Survey of India, the nodal agency for carrying out landslide related research in India. And this is the NDMA, this one map showing the different landslide affected states. And for your information, almost 12.6% of the Indian landmass is categorized is under landslide prone, and which contributes almost 8% of global landslide fatalities. And only from northeastern region in 2020, 52 casualties are reported post monsoon. So you can understand the severity of landslide hazard in India and NER or eastern sector as a whole. And as you know, various organizations and agencies are identified as carrying out for landslide hazard zonation maps and other hazard zonations by uh, but then remote sensing and GIS-based mapping techniques are considered uh, because of the fact that it is cost-effective and less time-consuming. And on top of that, availability of really high-resolution images, either free or at affordable cost, makes this usage of RSGS technique affordability. And it's also fact that that remote sensing derived database can be integrated very easily with any ground-based information for further analysis. So all this makes this technology popular for taking up a landslide investigation, susceptibility followed by susceptibility and hazard zonation. This is an example. I just wanted to show this, for high resolution and medium resolution of database. So this is of IRS list 3 multispectral data of 23.5 meter resolution. Entire zone is Meghalaya Plateau is seen with some of the portion of this thing. And if you want detailed information, then we can select large scale, high resolution data. So this is an 4 meter resolution database, and this is 23.5 meter satellite data. And if you want to have a more terrain specific overview, image can be overlaid on a digital elevation model to get the 3D perspective. So basically, it is a synoptic view, and it will, that this gives a most advantageous situation for this mapping and integration purpose. So coming to the role of remote sensing technique for landslide studies, right from landslide detection, followed by its classification of landslide, then further monitoring of the landslide movement, then their analysis and prediction of slope. All this can be carried out using remote sensing database of various resolution, both from spatial to temporal resolution. So, and all this work can be done by using direct mapping of landslide is possible, and or mapping of all and potential landslide areas is also possible. Derivation of information on causative factors of landslide, or making an area susceptible, that is also possible. And landslide displacement and movement measurement is also possible using remote sensing and GIS technique. Just for your information, we have various ranges of sensors available right now, so that can be categorized broadly into active sensors. Basically, we know the synthetic aperture radar or radar database. Passive sensors, also we have maybe panchromatic data, black and white data. We can have we are also having array of multispectral data from different resolution, sub-meter resolution to some kilometer resolution. Then we also have hyperspectral data. We also have thermal data, so from which are operating either from airborne or spaceborne platforms. We also have ranges of ground-based sensor, which is for landslide study. ALTM database is also, terrestrial laser the data is also very useful, and all this SAR data, panchromatic data, or multispectral data are also useful for deriving digital elevation model. And from there we can also use a digital terrain model or digital surface model. Nowadays, use of UAV is also being popularized. So, selection of database, it depends mostly on the goal of our study, whether it is operational or scientific purpose. The study has been done. Size and velocity of landslide, and its most importantly, its exposure condition. So depending upon this, and then like mapping scale, either of the combination of either SAR data or optical data, or their combination of these, or several techniques can be mostly we selection is data selection is done based on the purpose, exposure condition, as well as mapping scale. We need to know this resolution and accuracy, so all these are variable depending upon the sensor type. And the SAR database are subjected to geometrical distortion induced by the topography. So at ANISAC, we are for landslide related studies, we are addressing different activities. Under different activities, we right from inventory mapping, we carry out susceptibility and hazard zonation, followed by vulnerability assessment and risk assessment. And we are also doing along with NREC for landslide early warning we are carrying out. We are also carrying out some R&D work in collaboration with NREC as well as some other educational institute. Okay, we will, apart from departmental collaboration, we also collaborate with GSI, NDMA, and state disaster management authorities and state remote sensing application centers for execution of this work. So coming to this direct science of these things, so the first step for landslide hazard zonation and susceptibility mapping is creation of landslide inventory database. So what does it mean? Landslide inventory means it is a map that records the location and where known the date of occurrence and the type of mass movement that have left discernible traces in an area. So this information on landslide inventory can be collected either from archive database, or we can generate our geomorphological inventory, which is again classified into 4 different classes: historical, event-based, seasonal, or multi-temporal. So all this mapping can either be done through visual interpretation or through semi-automated classification. Basically is a as object-based classification we carry out, and nowadays we are doing more this on AI-based classification, and machine learning technologies are also being introduced for this mapping. As I told, like exposure condition of this particular slide also matters. Maybe when the ground observation, we may not be able to get the entire view of a landslide. So in that scenario, images of a certain resolution may be of help for our mapping and interpretation and further assessment of this hazard. Okay. And if this is an example for, okay, for now I'm from the theory I'm moving towards some practical or case studies. So here this one I have shown like how for this, if we don't have a proper exposure condition in the field, then remote sensing image can be of great help for our mapping and further analysis. And for seasonal analysis, suppose if we take a pre-monsoon data and post-monsoon data, depending upon this tonal variation and shape and size, we go for landslide inventory mapping. Or in case we carry out the susceptibility mapping, one can use this is an example of project that has been carried out by the department. So we use this 4MX data, which is of 4-meter resolution. We use cartoons and data for DM, and certain techniques has been, image classification has been done like top of atmosphere correction, generation of NDVI, GNDVI, and PCA image has been calculated, and subsequently based on semi-automated method is used for landslide inventory mapping. For geomorphological mapping, one can even use for very old landslide which doesn't have any visible sign at present. DM image can be, satellite image can be dragged over a DM, and depending upon the geomorphic features, one can identify an old landslide, and subsequently even they can level different parts of the landslide. Compared in, this is a comparison I'm showing for this is a textbook image, and this is a real time real picture from an area from Arunachal Pradesh. Okay. This is an example I'm showing from Google image, and this is from Sikkim. Again, for monitoring purpose, directly using temporal data also we can carry out this monitoring. Landslide monitoring. This is an example from 2011 data. You can see this part, only a small portion of this landslide affected areas, and which has become very big in 2017. You can see an impoundment of water that has taken place. This is known as a Kanka river, and this is the view of the same area from 2019 image. Okay, so we can see some sort of stability. The slide has taken place because of this, and this debris material we are seeing some vegetation. So this type of monitoring or exercise can also be done. Now coming to the susceptibility, what does it mean? Theoretically, any hazard is defined by a defined as the probability of occurrence of a potentially damaging phenomena with a given area with a given period of time. So when you call a susceptibility map, landslide susceptibility map basically doesn't talk about this temporal part. It only defines an area and make a division of the landmass into homogeneous areas or domains and their ranking according to degrees of actual or potential hazard caused by mass movement. Okay. Basically, the assessment of the susceptibility of the terrain for landslide is expressed as a likelihood that a landslide might occur under the given terrain conditions or parameter, and the determination of the probability that a triggering event occurs, such as the major rainfall events or earthquake. A relation is made between the magnitude and return period of the triggering event and the occurrence of the landslide either through historical studies or through physical models. To carry out establish this part, we need to carry out the landslide inventory mapping very accurately. Okay? And their classification, whether it was a debris slide, rockfall, and all these things. So basically, a landslide black box model or slopes instability is built upon on the assumption that the factors which has caused slope failure in a region are the same as those which will generate landslide in future too. Okay. So when we carry out landslide hazard zonation using remote sensing or space derived input. So this input database either can be aerial photographs or satellite data or maybe UAV image. So the sensor may be either airborne or spaceborne, whatever it is. So what we do, first thing we do is we prepare various geo-environmental factor maps. Then I crossed either cross or do the analysis with the existing landslide, which is represented by landslide inventory map, and then their integration either through statistical analysis or empirical based analysis. So and then map values, suppose if we use a statistical based analysis, the statistical relation is established for each class with the landslide inventory map. Okay. And then map values are replaced by statistical values. All maps are integrated, and then this integrated map is classified into different categories depending upon their degrees or potential degrees for for potential hazard threat. And this classified map is crossed with again landslide maps, and the results are validated. Okay. So this entire thing I will be showing you some example. Okay, so this landslide zonation either can be done following direct method, directly geomorphological mapping can be done, and these features which are susceptible like indicators for landslide susceptibility in an area can be mapped and the area can be demarcated, or through the landslide distribution analysis. But usually for remote sensing or space derived inputs, what we do, we follow this indirect methods. So that can be either an integration is done either through statistical or empirical methods. So under statistical categories also there are fewer models are available. We call this information value method or weights of evidence methods or multivariate techniques. Or in case of empirical methods, it is either it can be knowledge driven, index overlay, fuzzy logic, analytical hierarchy process, certainty factor, terms of Schaefer belief theory. All these models can be used. And for deterministic modeling, like Newmark model, if usually for earthquake derived landslide, this model is used, and this is a 12-step model for used for mainly for debris landslide. Here I have mentioned about geo-environmental factor map. So by that, usually we mean the basically the positive parameters what we consider for triggering a landslide, and more or less this remains static over a period of time. These are basically lithology or rock type in an area, fault lineament and their density, that means geological structure existing in an area, drainage and their density, geomorphology of that area, rock weathering condition, soil depth, soil texture, slope amount, slope discontinuity relationship, land use and land cover. So this mappings is done using mostly image interpretation followed by their ground verification. And wherever information is required, we also take help from the DKC data. And for slope discontinuity relationship, this basically means the relationship of a terrain topographic slope and thus bedding slope. If it is sedimentary bed is present, so their relationship, which is prepared basically using the stereographic projection. This stereographic projection is mostly carried out in the geology purpose, and more emphasis always we nowadays we provide for land detailed land use and land cover mapping, because we have seen this anthropogenic factor to trigger landslide, and especially in the urban. It means I not say it triggers, but it accelerates the process of landslide, especially in the urbanized area. And this rainfall and earthquake we usually consider as a triggering factors, and the information we usually collect from the legacy data. And landslide, which is landslide inventory map, I have shown few examples how we collect this information about landslide from imagery. It is basically to evaluate the past incidences in our area of study, and which contains both archive and geomorphological inventory information, and they can be used for mapping as well as validation of our result. So this is an example from a work carried out between Shillong Silchar Aizawl Highway and on the National Highway 44 corridor for about 305 kilometer area. So this is how we have prepared all this thematic layer, geo-environmental layer here. This is a view of structural map, geomorphology map, lithology map. It is slope deep relationship, discontinuity relationship map, rock weathering condition, land use land cover condition, drainage, anthropogenic factors, soil texture, soil depth. And after that, all these are, once these maps are prepared, we call it as a pre-fill maps, and then these maps are finalized post-fill verification. So these are some of the fill photographs I'm showing that. In first step for Landsat hazard donation user remote sensing GIS technique is mapping of pre-fill, carrying out a pre-fill mapping, then followed by their field check and finalization of all this map, and then their integration either to statistical methods or to empirical model. Okay, so just for information, this particular area, experimental landslide early warning is being generated in collaboration with NRSC Hyderabad, and these informations are available and this on this particular area under in this portal. Okay. So once this hazard donation map is ready, this can be further used for road realignment planning also. So now I'll highlight the usage of like landslide hazard donation map. So once the maps is ready, we can either use this, utilize it for generation of early warning purpose or for planning purpose even. So suppose we have an existing road. This is an example from Northeast again. This is along National Highway 53. So you can see this is this area. This is the existing road. And what happened, almost road is this existing road is reported to be affected by landslide every monsoon season. So that's why that study was taken up by our organization, and it is shown that this is the existing land use thing. And you can see this all this going through the red patches mostly, so very high and high susceptibility zones. So when the request came to us from the user organization, we found that this road can be connected from this point to realign, like from this point to this point. And so the suggestion has been given to the concern, and it is you can say the new or suggested road, if built, it will be shortened from the existing road by almost by 11.13 kilometer, and it also passes through a village, which may be again useful for economic development of the village. And this is again, suppose if we have a susceptibility or hazard susceptibility map, a hazard conversion, and if we have a vulnerability assessment done in for particular study area, then this both can be used for generating a risk map. And this risk map can be utilized for the concerned authorities for risk, reduction purpose by imposing some changes in either in land use or in some other sector. Okay, or they can even introduce certain insurance policies so that it can have help in the economic sector also. Economic risk also can be reduced. This is again another example I'm showing. After the hazard donation map is done, then site suitability was suggested for road alignment. So one example I have shown, after once the road is existed, realignment. This is before the construction of the road only. Susceptibility mapping has been done and suggestion has been given. So basically, as I told, it all depends like our objective purpose of the study. So depending upon this, that we can select our database of the remote sensing database, which is, nowadays we have almost 17 operational earth observation satellites on board, and their resolution varies from 0.25 meter to 1 kilometer. So, and from 24 days coverage to 24 by 7 coverage we have. We do have satellite database which are freely available of, highest resolution is 10 meter. We also have Landsat series of 30 meter special resolution apart from Master and Sentinel. Sentinel-1 is basically a SAIARD data, so can be utilized for generation of digital elevation model and subsequently in deriving the information on the slope categories. So we have plenty of database available right from in the domain of for the user usage, either in the free or in the nominal prices. So one can experimentally use for creation of the susceptibility mapping. And nowadays we are also using UAV data. This is an example from Shillong itself, done by ours. Mapping has been done from our group. So you can see the DSM has been generated, and all these images, these are the camera view of different images that has been taken from using UAV, and subsequently this is after stitching. So auto tie has been in intermediate processing, and then DSM has been generated. So if we even take an image pre and post hazard, you can see we even go for a volume calculation, how much material has been moved due to the landslide. Okay. I think that's all short. In a short, I wanted to explain, like show you, and then if there is any question, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you. I hope there is enough time for question and answer session.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for providing insight on role of remote sensing and GIS in landside studies. The type of data used in these technologies for the purpose of landside research, and the use of remote sensing and GIS in different mapping like landslide inventory, and the landslide database and inventory is an important, in fact, first step towards not only the landslide hazard mapping and risk assessment, but also towards any of the landslide hazard mitigation and management program. And inventory of landslide before donation is a prerequisite, because an area can be set susceptible to landslides when the terrain conditions are comparable to those where a slide has occurred. And landslide hazards can be avoided by preventing development on known landslide hazard areas, and where avoidance is not possible, mitigation measures can be applied to reduce the risk through appropriate engineering works. So thank you very much
I
for
hope
your
I'm
wonderful
within the time.
presentation.
I hope I'm on time.
Yes,
A
yes, ma'am,
little
you are
bit
on time.
troubleshooting is done, but anyway, I just wanted
Yeah,
to give an overall
that's the issue
picture.
with Google Meet. It catches background voice.
Yes, yes. So if there
Ma'am,
is
as of now, there are no questions
okay.
raised by our participants. So thank you very much, ma'am,
Welcome.
for joining us.
So I'll log off.
So yes, ma'am, sure, ma'am.
Okay.
So with this, we draw the curtain of second day of our 3-day capacity building program on landslide risk management and GIS technology. That is jointly organized by NIDM and SAIARD. But before that, I would take privilege to propose vote of thanks. At the outset, I would like to extend my generous thanks to today's speakers, Dr. Harjeet Kaur, Junior Consultant NIDM, Dr. Raju Thapa, Junior Consultant NIDM, and Dr. Kuntala Bhushan, Scientist, Northeastern Space Application Center, for their wonderful presentation and for sparing their valuable time and providing us opportunity to gain from their respective experience and expertise. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank our participant for their who have joined us in this training program. I also express my gratitude towards Executive Director NIDM for his continuous support and guidance. And I would also like to thank team of SAIARD and my GMRD team for providing continuous support in organizing this training program. And today's link will also be used to join the event tomorrow. Same link will be active. And so see you all tomorrow on the third day of the training program. So once again, thank you very much to all for joining us in this program. Now I request host to kindly end the today's meeting. I once again request host to kindly end today's meeting.